We are going to be talking about travel insurance today, and a case which partly reminds us to check the fine print of our policies, but also demonstrates how sometimes the fine print doesn't actually spell things out as clearly as it should. So that's going to be the main focus. A couple of guests standing by to chat to us about that. And then I hope we'll have time for some open line calls. As you have pointed out before, travel insurance policies always contain exclusions of some sort which apply to the traveller, and they might be age related, they might be medical. For example, most policies won't cover you if you are doing something dangerous like going skydiving, for example. But in today's case, those exclusions were, I think the word I want to use is almost extrapolated to include someone who wasn't even the policyholder in this case. Won't you tell us what happened, Wendy?
Sure. So Julie Moritz reached out to us as a last resort recently after exhausting all internal channels with Discovery Insure after they rejected her claim for travel curtailment, a move that she felt was very unfair. The claim was rejected because it involved a cardiovascular event in someone over 70. Now, that's a fairly regular exclusion. Do you remember that case we had with a couple that went over and the husband had some kind of heart event in India?
Yes, that's
right. Had
right.
brilliant care, but the claim was rejected
because of his age and,
he was over 70 and they hadn't read the small print. In the end, that was, I don't know if we ever reflected on that, was overturned on a goodwill basis after the show. But in any event, that is fairly standard. So it applies to the traveller.
So if you're over 70 and you have a medical incident like that, you're not going to be covered. But this wasn't Julie. Julie is neither over 70 nor did she suffer the event.
No,
it was her mom.
It was her mom. So the backstory is that Julie's mom passed away at the end of August this year, just recently, shortly after celebrating her 100th birthday.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. So Julie left on a brief overseas trip just 3 days before her mom passed away. And when she got the devastating news, of course, she immediately cancelled the rest of her trip and she returned home the next day. So she'd bought her flights with her credit card, which did provide some cover for if she had to cancel her flights due to death or health reasons. But she paid another 570 Rand for premium top-up insurance with Discovery Insure. And that policy's curtailment benefit, covering both travel and accommodation changes, was 50,000 Rand in total. Julie's claim amounted to around 26,000 Rand, so she expected that it would be covered in full. But to her surprise, naughty surprise, she got a very hard no from Discovery Insure. Discovery's rationale, she told us, was that since my mother passed from a cardiovascular condition and she was over 70, the exclusion applies.
So I was astonished when I read that.
Yes,
I think you were too, and clearly Julie was, and Julie is with us on the line now. And Julie, firstly, I'm so sorry for the loss of your mom, but thank you so much for joining us to talk about this today so that others can learn from this quite extraordinary case, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Julie, it's Wendy here. You'd been under the impression that the curtailment cover applied to you.
100%.
And you only, and you cut the trip short because of a cardiovascular event, and you're not over 70, so you thought all was fine. But Discovery claimed otherwise, as we've said. Was the policy wording clear about that?
So when I got the policy, there was like 100 pages of small print, etc., and I just thought top up. I didn't think anything was going to happen, so I just signed it. I didn't read the 100 pages of exclusions or whatever. And then when I claimed, I asked. They came back and they said on page 32 it says over 70. Sorry for you, no, cardiovascular.
And then, you must have thought, well, yes, but I'm neither of those things. What did they point to you to in saying, well, it actually applies to third party, to your relatives, and your mum was...
They were not interested. At that stage, they were totally not interested. They just kept saying, please refer to page 32, blah, blah, blah. So they never, ever would listen to me. I wrote them a letter and I said, no, but it's my mother. And she actually didn't die of a cardiac... Well, she just, in her sleep, she passed away. Right. She was 100.
Yeah.
So it didn't, the doctor at the bedside, what happened to be the heart doctor, and he just put cardiovascular, But it was irrelevant because she was never an insured one.
Yeah. Julian, I mean, you didn't stop there when you got Discovery saying absolutely no. You then, I know, went to MediCheck, who we've had on the show before,
Yes.
Mark Hyman, who has taken up many cases of such disputes. And he also argued with them that curtailment clause didn't specify that this applied to the family members. But he also didn't get any luck, did he?
Correct. No, not at all. So I was like, oh, my heck, what do we do now? Wendy Knowler.
Okay. And what did Wendy Knowler do next?
Okay, so when Julie turned to me for help, I shared her situation with Christelle Coleman, another friend of the show. She's CEO of AMI Underwriting Managers and obviously an insurance fundi, but with a wealth of experience in travel insurance, how it works and how it's supposed to work. She told me that on the wording and the facts presented, Discovery's rejection looked, as she put it, unsustainable. Curtailment cover is triggered by the death of a close or immediate family member, she said. The general pre-existing cardiovascular exclusions in the top-up policy are drafted around the insured traveller's own medical risks. They don't clearly extend to the health of a non-insured relative who didn't travel. She said, where insurers intend to exclude curtailment following a relative's death due to that relative's pre-existing cardiovascular condition or due to their age, they say so expressly, Christelle said. But in this Discovery's case, in the case of the policy that Julie took out, the wording does not. So I pointed that out in my media query that I sent to Discovery Insure, and I asked the insurer to identify the exact clause which makes persons over 70 with cardiovascular conditions applicable specifically to a non-insured relative's death.
Okay, and what sort of response did you get when you did that,
A
Wendy?
rather pleasing one, I have to say. Discovery Insure CEO Robert Atwell said that the company had reviewed Julie's case in detail and, quote, given the potential for various interpretations of the policy wording, we've decided to honor her claim. We extend our sincere condolences to Ms. Moritz and her family during this difficult time, and we appreciate you bringing the matter to our attention. And then this. We are also reviewing the relevant policy wording to ensure that it is clear, fair, and easily understood by all clients.
Okay, so not just saying we will honor Julie's claim, but also saying we recognize that there is some lack of clarity here and we will fix it going forward. Julie, how did it feel? How did you get that news and how did it feel to hear that response?
Wow, I got an email and I was like, oh my God, thank God, it's like, what do I do now? But I haven't spoken to them since then. I've just got the email. I haven't gone further than that at this stage. I'm still waiting to discuss it with them and et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so obviously a huge relief, but I mean, besides the issue of the wording being so foggy, shall we say, and not explicit enough, Julie, I mean, your it sounds to me from reading what you've described about how you were dealt with that there was a general lack of empathy, I think is the word I'm looking for. I mean, you're talking to somebody who has just told you they've lost their mum. It doesn't sound like there was a lot of sort of care and human feeling in the way that you were dealt with.
Yeah, not at all. In fact, as soon as I arrived back in South Africa, I phoned them to say, this is my story. And they said, well, just send the following things through, which I did. And then they called me back and they said, please say what the reason for her death, which I did. And then they came back immediately and said, sorry for you, not applicable, page 32. And then subsequent to that, I felt that maybe the people that were initially looking at the claim or whatever were not educated is the wrong word, but were looking A must equal A. They weren't looking at the full scenario in my mind. It was just, this is what it says, full stop. You know what I mean? So I think I'm delighted that they've understood what was incorrect.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Julie, I'm so glad that it's had this kind of happy outcome. Obviously, again, the circumstances are awful and we're sorry for that. But thanks for being willing to come on and chat to us today.
No, pleasure. And thank you for everything you guys did. I really appreciate it.
Julie
Most
Moritz,
welcome.
thank you. It's a huge pleasure. Now, Christelle was actually listening into that, Christelle Coleman of Me. And Christelle, it's always lovely to have you on the show. And thanks so much for all the help that you give on cases like this. I mean, listening to that story and Wendy's already shared some of your initial reaction when you sent Julie's story to her. Do you think this is a common issue? One thing that I think is probably fairly common is that when presented with 60, 70 pages of small print, most of us aren't going to read all the way to the end, are we?
Absolutely, Pippa. Sorry, forgive me, my voice is a bit, I'm not feeling too great.
Oh, sorry.
But no. So the problem that we have is in the travel insurance market. I think people are so excited to go overseas, and they want to get the insurance issued for the visa applications and get it all in, and it's such a joyous and wonderful journey that you go on. They say the preparation is as much part of the joy of the journey as the journey itself, that we tend to rush over the travel insurance aspect of it. And when I went overseas recently, I was really paying a lot of attention to when I took the policy out. And yes, because I'm on HRT treatment, and I wanted to see if the policy was going to lift it as a pre-existing condition, if the question is going to be asked if I pick up a medical condition while on my travels. I don't know. It was really, really complicated and hard for me to get to that point, and I understand this. So this is a call for me. It's a call out to all travel insurers out there to point out the big issue and big ticket problems more clearly to clients when they buy these policies, because it's easy to buy travel insurance. It's like that. It's 20 seconds. It's the quicker the policy is issued, the better. But the problem is when the tacky hits the tar, when something really big goes wrong when you're overseas, then only do you find out there's a problem, and it's very traumatic. Yeah. So that's my opinion in a nutshell. And I stand part of this industry. I understand why it's really difficult to point all the problems out. But when you're dealing with a close to 70-year-old traveler, make the point of highlighting the issues that are mostly the claims that get reported to the ombudsman. If you think about it, it's not difficult to appreciate that pre-existing medical conditions from 60 plus is a common theme for claim problems. Point it out to your clients. If they're over 60, we have the data available to us. So I think it can be done in a more transparent way. I don't know, Wendy, if you agree.
Of course I agree, but it's nice to hear someone from the insurance industry say that.
Yeah. Just if I can make a comment, it strikes me, point it out to your client. I think part of the difficulty now is so many people are buying these policies with no intermediary who's going to do the pointing out for them, Christelle. They're clicking on a button and buying it online without ever engaging with another human being as part of that process. I mean, what does that look, pointing it out in an electronic form? Is that a sort of do you think the particular clauses should be big and bold and in red, for example?
I do.
Well, simple as that. I mean, Pippa, I'm so glad you mentioned this, because the fact that we always try, we are uninformed insurance individuals just buying a policy as quickly as possible online. That is where the problem starts. And those direct insurers, whether it's travel insurance or motor or home or whatever, have a duty to disclose these big problems to clients up front. But often it doesn't happen, and the client just get left, they just get left in the lurch. So, Wendy, what you're doing with travel insurance is so important, because I'm pleased that that's the way Discovery reacted, because the Ombuds is quite clear. You're not allowed to use an exclusion if it's not clear and ambiguous. Yes, if it's not clear, then it's up to the insurer to make it very clear. So we're not saying you can't have this exclusion, but it needs to be clear. It needs to hit you in the face. If you're 70 years old and you travel, your mother might be 90. It's about making it clearer. And in the digital world, Pippa, we know how easy it is. The interaction, it's faster, but your app or your WhatsApp conversation can give those prompts out immediately. Be aware, this is not covered. So,
tick this box. Have you noticed clause 13.4, which says
initial here,
something like that? Yeah.
So I think it's fair to say, on reading Discovery Insurer's response, that they're now going to be making that clause unambiguous. So in other words, that exclusion over 70 cardiovascular is going to apply if you submit a curtailment plan. It's going to apply to your relative that has passed away and that you need to cancel a trip for. So, I mean, as somebody who, my mother is 85 and I'll be traveling overseas in a few months, I will certainly now, as a result of, and I love this. I mean, I'm doing this for so many years, and this is something new that I've just
never
learned
come
now.
across.
I would have just assumed that if my mom had to, God forbid, pass away while I was away, and I had to come back in a hurry, that I would my claim would be covered. And so the question is this the norm in the industry, that they all will apply that exclusion to your third party relatives, or are there some that don't? Do we need to shop around if we're in this position?
When you contacted me, I was like, what? I've never heard of this.
Yeah.
So I did my research, and there's one big other local insurer that has this exclusion, but the rest of the market don't. And internationally, it's quite an uncommon exclusion. So I would definitely shop around. I would definitely. I mean, I don't have parents. I'm of that age, but I think it brings us back to a bigger discussion, and it's around these very long policy wording. So if you think about what the lady said, over 100 pages for the discovery, all the other wordings are like that, 50 pages, 60 pages, and it goes to motor insurance, home insurance, your liability. The normal personal insurance policy in the market is close to 100 pages. And I'm not saying this to punt my business, but one of the biggest things that we wanted to do was to bring the length of the wording down, and our full policy wording is 15 pages long. And what happens? People actually read the wording, and they come back and they ask questions. But when you overwhelm someone with a 100-page document, they give up. I mean, who is going to read and understand? You could use ChatGPT, and that could be a tip for your listeners, Wendy, is to say, when you buy a travel insurance policy, save the documents, upload it into ChatGPT, and say, what should I be concerned about?
Well, that's the
what
thing. Will they know?
exclusions?
Will they know?
If you ask it correctly,
Probably,
it will tell you what the big issues are. But you shouldn't be using ChatGPT to be your risk advisor. But I'm just saying that's a test that you can do. If you don't want to read the whole document, just ask someone who reads it in 2 seconds to tell you what are the big major problem areas that you should be aware of.
Okay.
But apart from that, you can't really buy it through a broker nowadays, travel insurance, so maybe we can change that as well.
Yeah. So I have 2 questions. Are you willing to name the insurers that also apply the exclusion to third-party family members?
Well, I'm already in trouble with Discovery now. I think you can name them.
All right.
You you ask me.
Is it Santam and ITC, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's all. They all want it. It's a Santam offering, and I think you came across that, and I said to you that I also
I did.
I also read that they have that, and I think. Unfortunately, what happens now is because they're the leaders in the market, a lot of the other insurers will now follow this this trend. But you have to ask yourself, as insurers, travel insurance is a profitable line of business.
That's what I was going to ask you. I didn't know that until the story.
Empathy. Well, the reality is COVID. Everyone took a huge hit, and the travel insurers took a massive hit. But there is certain risk management transfer mechanisms in place to deal with that, and reinsurance and all of that. As a rule, if you do your job well, as a travel insurer, it's a good business to be in.
Low claims ratios.
Yes, but look, when you have a big medical claim, a repat claim, or someone having a heart attack in the US, when I was running Europe Assistance Africa, we once had a client with a heart attack in the US. We had to wire money over. That's the first time that I really actually had interaction with that word. But you make that transfer, $340,000 before they would let him into the theater and ICU. So it can be very, very expensive. But overall, it's a good business to be in. That's why it's around. Yeah. And I just think we need to remember we're dealing with people's lives. It's empathy. It's the person's mother that passed away. If the exclusion's not clear, if you can't, if if this thing goes to the ombudsman, they're going to pay out. Don't reject the claim, because that's the that's empathy that we're asking for as policyholders and as providers. So that's our asset test. If I look at a rejection, I say, if this thing goes to the ombudsman, will I have an overturn? With other words, will the ombudsman rule against me? Because I know what the rules are. And if there's any doubt, we pay the claim. If we know that the ombudsman will support the rejection because it's a poorly maintained roof or the client was drunk when he was driving, then only will we reject. And I wish everyone thought like that.
Yeah. There are just a couple of listener questions coming through, which I'd like to put to you, if I may. Firstly, Imada asking, is it commonplace for insurance companies to exclude a cardiac event for somebody over 70? Do all of them have that clause?
Yes.
They do. Okay.
Yes. Wendy would be able to answer that as well.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because so many people, in that age bracket are traveling, many of them South Africans, to see family who've emigrated, and so they go at great risk. It's obviously, Christelle, I would imagine the risk is considered too great for the insurers to take on.
Yeah, the absolute premise of insurance, of insuring, short-term insurance is you insure yourself for sudden and unforeseen events. And I think when you get to 70 plus, a heart failure or heart attack doesn't become that unforeseen, and it could make the rest of us paying too much premium. It would or make it unaffordable, because I just explained to you how expensive that event in the US was. So if you want to travel, they always say when you're young, go and travel. So to all the young listeners, go and travel. You could still afford your travel insurance. But the cruel thing is we really can only afford to travel properly when we get to 70 plus.
And have the time.
And money. Yeah.
Vic, not alone, I'm sure, in feeling it is just so unfair to have that clause applied to a third party and not to the person who is travelling. Vic, you're not the only person expressing that sentiment. But here is a voice note from Hedda that perhaps we can just play to you, Christelle, before we say goodbye. Let's take a quick listen.
With regard to travel insurance, I am planning a trip in November 2026. It's a very expensive trip for the whole family, and I'm looking for cancel for any reason insurance. And I'm battling to find that. I found one company who will offer 50% cancellation for any reason. I haven't received the small print from them regarding exactly what that means. So just wondering, is there any policy which covers cancel for any reason in South Africa?
It's a very interesting question. Christelle, it wasn't the clearest voice note. Were you able to hear the question?
No, yes, I got it. And Wendy and I have history with this topic, remember?
Yes.
You did that. So to Heather, I'm not an expert on all the products in the market. I'm not a broker. I'm a competitor as well. But I know that the Hollard travel insurance policy has cancellation for any reason. But just be warned, and this is what our conversation was about before, some of the most travel insurance policies will only refund you for the actual cost of the ticket and not the airport taxes.
Yeah.
So if you fly economy, about half of your ticket price will be airport taxes. So if you cancel for the whole family, you will only get about 60% back of the flight costs, but you should get all your accommodation costs and all of that back if you don't get a refund from the property. But there's always these hidden costs. So cancellation for any reason sounds so comprehensive. That's what I felt like. I'm covered here, and then there was that shortfall. So just be aware.
Yeah. One last question, and it's more a comment than a question, but perhaps you'd like to respond to it. Juno just saying, it's so frustrating because even if you do go through the policy with a fine-tooth comb and alert yourself to all of these exclusions, you don't have any choice. You can't opt out of the exclusion or say, I want you to remove that from the policy. It feels very disempowering, Christelle.
It does, but it's not that different from when you have a motor car insurance and it says no children under the age of 25 is allowed to drive the vehicle. It's about being aware of the risks. It's about being put into a position to proactively manage those risks. With other words, if you're not allowed to ski on your travel insurance policy and you go onto the slopes and you break a leg, then you did that knowingly. I think what I hear about all these complaints that Winnie always referred to me is just the absolute shock of how is this possible? I did not understand this. If I had known, I would have been prepared. Yeah. And that's why TCF, treating customers fairly, and all the PPR regulations, all the regulations put in place by the authorities is really just to insurers to say, be transparent, be upfront, warn people that they can make informed decisions. And that's what we can get better at as an industry.
And in this case, knowledge is power, because there are some policies, travel policies, that would not apply that exclusion. And in my case, if my mom had to pass away while I'm away, I could find a policy that would still pay my curtailment costs and not say, well, she was over 70, sorry for you. So in this case, when not all policies are created equal, it pays to know if you're in a certain situation, you can find a product that would accommodate you.
But you need to know to look specifically for it. Yeah. Christelle, thank you. I'm so sorry that you're not feeling well. We so appreciate your time. And back to bed with you, please. And feel better soon, please. Christelle Coleman of AMI Underwriting Managers. Thank you so much for your time. Right. Well, it's nice to get a positive travel insurance comment in from Micheline, who says she wants to give a shout out to Bright Travel Insurance. She says, I've taken top-up policies for over 30 years. For the first time this year, I had to have an operation overseas that included flights to the hospital, extra accommodation, all the doctors and specialists and medication, etc. Micheline did her bit. She kept all the slips, and she says after filling in many forms over a month, I was paid back almost everything, excepting 2 taxi rides to the hospital for which I did not have a receipt.
Yeah, that's common.
Yeah, I'm
Taxi
69,
rides.
she says. I was so pleased that I had the insurance.
Thank you for that positive
That's
one.
great.
And I think she raises an important point, is that she had all her receipts. We've covered cases in the past, Pippa, where they were, and taxi rides were one of them. So ensure that you get proper receipts. But I think it's the case that most taxi drivers can't issue them in the way that the insurers
and
want them.
whoever thinks to ask for them as well.
And it's a lot of money, and you're paying, in rand.
In euros and dollars.
When you earning
converted
rands.
from the rand.
So I think that's the other thing, is to also look from the time of the incident, if you're able, is to look very carefully at what the policy requires you to do and present to them in terms of evidence. Another case, there was a rejection because there was a language issue with an Italian hospital. They couldn't make head or tail of the invoice, and so they wouldn't cover that. So there's the evidence is also a very important part of your chances of having a successful claim.
So keeping trail of all the paperwork. Well, a comment in from a tech journalist listening does not recommend putting the policy into ChatGPT to check it.
That's what I said.
Wendy also said hadn't seen that one. She's saying besides any ethical considerations around using generative AI and the fact that it can hallucinate incorrect information, a privacy risk here because of the kind of information a policy like that would include is not the kind of thing you want to be putting into
Thank you for that.
AI. Thanks, Mandy. That's a helpful comment to receive. Now, this is an interesting one, and I don't know if you've come across it before, Wendy, but Lawrence has a conundrum. Lawrence has lotto tickets close to expiration date. It says, I went to the Ituba regional office, who assured me any retailer with the new lotto machine will still be able to check my tickets. I've now been to several Pick and Pay stores. None of them could help. They tell me to go to Ituba. So what do I do now? There is obviously a change in the lotto provider happening.
Provider, yes.
So there is a change of formatting or whatever it may be. So what does he do? He has valid tickets that he wants to be able to
for sure
to redeem. What do you do?
I don't know. This is the short answer.
Okay.
I've never had this question before, but I mean, clearly, if they are within the dates, the validity dates,
they must be on it.
And he's paid for them. They must be on it. There must be a way that he can know whether he's won anything on them or not. I'll have to investigate that. I don't know.
Okay, Lawrence, please won't you send us an email with just a few more details? And I'm saying this, but perhaps somebody listening has already circumvented this problem, because you can't be the only person in that position.
Ideal.
So if anybody listening has already found the solution to that and can tell us where to send Lawrence to be able to check his tickets before there is they expire, please do that. Otherwise, Lawrence, if you want to pop through an email, you can send it to me on pippah@capetalk.co.za, or go onto Wendy's website, which is wendyknowler.co.za, and fill out the sort of contact form on the front. Unlike most businesses which give you an online contact form, contact us here hoping that they'll can just forget their sort. Wendy does actually like it being done that way, because that generates all of the information that she needs from you.
Yes.
So please do consider that. Right. Okay, so Susan mailed me during the week, and I'm going to just bring this up because it is a topic we have actually covered before, but she raises an interesting question attached to it, Wendy.
Okay.
And it's to do with being harassed for somebody else's debt repayment.
You've had this experience.
The case study a couple of years ago was my own, where I was
Yes.
being called and harassed, and I think by the time we raised it on air, I'd received something like 70 phone calls from them,
Yes.
chasing a debt which was not mine. And I'd sent them my ID, and I'd said to them, this is not me. My number is, this is just, you've got the wrong person. And I could not get them to stop calling me. And in the end, that case, we had to go to the Council for Debt Collectors and lodge a formal complaint,
I
which is
remember.
what stopped it in the end. But Susan mailed me during the week. She said, recently I've been bothered by someone trying to contact a D Mazibuko on my phone number. Whoever D Mazibuko might be, they owe Ackermans some money. And I've had multiple SMSs and a couple of phone calls. Susan has told them it's not her, but the demands keep coming, she says. And look, I've sent her the podcast from that last conversation. So if she wants to take it further and report it to the Council for Debt Collectors, Susan, the details are in that podcast on how to do it. But she raised a very interesting point. She said, surely it shouldn't be this easy for somebody to give an incorrect phone number attached to a credit application. She says, why aren't retailers checking that the phone number provided is in that person's possession and making
That's
it
a
be
very
called in store?
It's a very good point, because
Yeah.
they're supposed to check everything else, affordability and all the rest.
So why not
And-
to the most basic check that the contact details they're giving you are accurate?
Yeah,
I think
they
it's a
should.
very fair
It's
point.
something to ask the credit ombud, for example. Let me do that.
Okay.
Why is that a check and it's not being done, or was it not considered? Because the other thing is, I mean, there might be a really important reason that doesn't involve you owe us money for Ms. Mazibuko to get to hear from that credit provider.
Yeah.
But they're not, because and it could have been captured incorrectly.
Yeah. Might be one digit is different,
it's
or yeah.
transposing a number. We see it with finger trouble bank account deposits, which cause so much heartache and
Yeah.
drama. So there are a number of scenarios. It also could be the case, and this is very common, people dodge the debt collectors by getting a new SIM card. I was listening to a Just Money feedback on results of a survey they did just this morning.
Yeah.
And they were saying something like, I wish I could access it quickly. I think people on average changing their cell phone numbers 3 times a year or something like
my
that.
goodness.
It is common, and then some of it, I don't know, or having multiple SIMs. So it could be the case that, if you don't use either you've got a new cell number that has a past. It's now been recycled to you, and you're then going to inherit those.
All the attached.
Yes. So
claims,
there's a
et
number
cetera.
of
Yeah.
scenarios that could be at play here. And if it's the case that you've inherited a recycled number, well, it's nothing.
Yeah. As you say,
You
there's
can't
so
stop
many
it.
explanations. It could have been
investigated it. You can't stop it.
It could have been deliberate, that I want to make it difficult for them to
Yes.
chase me, because I know I have no intention of ever paying this account. But it's also possible, as you
Capturing
say,
a mistake.
that somebody misread an 8 as a
Yeah.
3 or,
Yeah.
or something like that. So, and as at the time we covered my case a few years ago, Wendy, I remember a legal expert saying, they're within their rights to keep pursuing the
Yeah.
debt.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, when they get that phone call, pretend it's not
Of
them
course
because they don't
do.
want to pay.
Yeah, it's
So
easy.
it's not like they're doing anything wrong, but there has to be a mechanism to formally alert them and provide proof, as I was happy to do. I remember saying I will go in and sign an affidavit, but just make it stop.
Yeah.
So Susan, I think it's an interesting question that we should explore a little bit further. And thank you for that. I'm just, my brain is rolling in the background here at the thought of changing a phone number 3 times a year. I have had the same phone number since I was 18 years old and got my first cell phone, Wendy, and I'm 49 now.
I got my first cell phone when I was working in London in the mid-90s, and then I came here and I got a cell number, a Vodacom number, and then when Cell C launched, I decided I needed to, for research purposes, because we only had MTN and Vodacom at that point, I needed to experience this network, which I did for 2 years, and then I ported back. So I have an 084 number, but I'm actually back with Vodacom, and I've had that number now for, like two decades maybe.
I've 31 years, literally only ever had one number my entire life. So how about that?
I've been wanting
I'm
to
sure
change
there must
mine.
be somebody
because
out there who can go longer than that, but
I'm sure. With me, I'm tempted to do it, except it's such a schlep because people hand my number out, other media organizations, and then I get calls and WhatsApps, and constantly. Sometimes on the weekend, I'm in a shop. Please tell me my rights, and it's very intrusive. But I just can't bring myself
to change
to
it.
actually do it. Yeah.
I think we can squeeze in one last open line, and it is from Lindy, who writes that she purchased a hairdryer online from a company called Hiyaat, Hiyaat, and it has never arrived. She said she was responding to an offer on Pinterest, so it was a direct marketing approach on Pinterest. She bought it online and it's never arrived. As she said, it's been almost 3 weeks now. I've not heard anything from them. I've been onto Hello Peter and seen there are many customers complaining about the same thing, but they are still advertising on Pinterest. What can I do to either receive my product or get my money back, is her question.
I think you can safely assume you're not going to get your product, especially if there's been a lack of comms around it. I would say if you paid with your credit card that you should try a chargeback with your bank. Ask for the disputes department and ask them to talk you through what they need to launch a chargeback. We discussed this last week, I recall, or the week before. I think I was sitting in this chair. So basically your bank goes to the merchant's bank and your bank says he has the proof they didn't get what they paid for, and you know that's assuming the bank account is still valid and has funds in it. It depends on the level of the scam. Yes.
Yeah, they might be long gone, but that's the thing to try, Lindy. So phone your bank, say you'd like to institute a chargeback procedure for that purchase. And unfortunately, the other thing is next time check Hello Peter before you make the purchase rather than afterwards. Unfortunately, many of us have learnt that the hard way, Lindy. Don't feel too bad. You're not alone.
That pop up on Facebook, Pinterest, etc. Please proceed with huge caution. No matter what the price is and no matter how desirable the item is, please, that is just a little dangling bit of bait there for you. Consider
Absolutely.
it that.
And I'm going to add to that and say also please be very, very careful, because a lot of those are lookalike sites and they are pretending to be legitimate, reputable businesses, but
Especially
there's
shoes.
I had an email this week from a jeweler. I bought a piece of jewelry for my daughter for her 21st earlier in the year. Wonderful service, beautiful piece from Janine Binneman, and I was so distressed to get an email sent to all of her customers saying, please be careful. Somebody is
Shocking.
putting themselves out there, pretending to be our business, offering all kinds of specials at vastly discounted rates, pretending to be us. And it's not us. And, they've got an excellent reputation for great service and happy customers
Being
who are now thinking, what is going on? What's happened to this business? And it's not her.
It happens to all the big brands. It happens to Cape, it's all of them. And we're sitting here, it's 2 months before
Christmas and
a month before Black Friday. So in the coming weeks, we're going to be doing a lot of
consumer education type stuff around
fraud
that,
prevention, etc. We do it every year, but the scams are prolific. It's increasing, so we'll do our bit to steer you clear of the most horrible ones in the simplest way that we can muster.
Okay, so I'm really sorry, Lindy, that it's I hope you're able to implement the chargeback issue, but if you're not, I'm really sorry that you learned that lesson the hard way. Thank you so much for your email. All right, we're going to leave it there with a reminder that if you do want to reach out to Wendy with a case, her website is wendyknowler.co.za, spelled KNOWLER. Fill out the form on that website because it really does help draw out of you all of the information that Wendy needs in order to follow up on your case. If you really don't like doing that, you're welcome to mail her on consumer@knowler.co.za, and it's spelled KNOWLER. Please do put the words CapeTalk in the subject line, as well as a word or two about the problem. And Wendy, thanks as always. We'll chat again next week.
We will.